Have you ever stopped to think, really think, what it takes for a country to actually protect its digital borders today, with cyber threats coming from everywhere all the time?
It's a huge question, isn't it? And it's forcing nations to rethink what sovereignty even means in the digital age.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into Denmark, looking at their whole strategy for cybersecurity and this idea of digital independence.
That's right. And it's more than just firewalls and antivirus. We'll be digging into new EU rules, Denmark's, frankly, quite bold plan to rely less on big tech, and some real-world attacks that really tested their defenses.
Yeah, we've got news reports, EU policy docs, some really detailed analyses of those
Our
incidents.
goal here is to understand how a super digitized country like Denmark tries to balance everything: security, privacy, innovation.
And importantly, what lessons you can take away from this for your own digital life, or maybe for your organization.
Absolutely. But before we jump in, we really want to thank our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com.
Oh, yeah. If you're looking for top-notch cybersecurity solutions or expert help, they're a fantastic resource. They connect you with vetted providers who get these challenges.
Definitely worth checking out. Okay, so Denmark. They're not doing this in isolation, are they? They're right in the thick of shaping EU digital policy.
Right. And there are two big EU things happening right now that are, well, causing a lot of discussion. Big implications for security versus our digital rights.
Now, the first one really highlights that tension. It's this thing called chat control.
Ah, yes, chat control. The Danes, with their EU presidency, are pushing this. The idea is forcing companies like Signal, WhatsApp.
To scan encrypted messages for child abuse material before the message is even sent. That's the controversial bit. There's a vote expected by, what, October 2025?
Scanning before encryption. That feels like it hits the core of end-to-end encryption, doesn't it? I know Denmark tried a compromise back in July 2025. Does that actually solve the privacy problem?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. The draft says nothing should prohibit, weaken, or circumvent encryption. But, and it's a big but, it also mandates these vetted technologies on your device.
On my device.
On the user's device, yeah.
Yeah.
To scan messages using AI and machine learning for known and even unknown abuse content before it gets encrypted.
So client-side scanning.
Exactly. You'd be asked for consent. If you don't consent, you might not be able to send images or videos or links, and some EU center would certify the tech.
So it's less about breaking encryption in transit, more about looking over your shoulder as you type,
That's the analogy the Internet Society used.
right?
And the opposition has been fierce. You had over 500 cryptographers signing that open letter.
Saying it's technically unfeasible and would completely undermine security. Those are strong words.
Very strong. They argue it creates huge vulnerabilities. Hackers, hostile states could exploit it. WhatsApp said flat out it breaks end-to-end encryption. Signal threatened to leave the EU entirely. Element's CEO called it fundamentally flawed. And Tuda Mail said they'd fight it in court rather than implement it. The core worry is creating a backdoor, even for a noble cause, weaken security for absolutely everyone.
And the false positives argument, too. Billions a day, potentially. Even with high accuracy.
That's a concern, yeah. Leads to this massive surveillance infrastructure. And it's divisive even among EU countries. About 15 support it, but 6 are strongly against, citing mass surveillance worries. Germany's still on the fence.
And the critics say, look, focus on other things. Education, hotlines, proper investigations with warrants, cooperation. Not this kind of technical fix that might break more than it solves. Apple backed away from similar plans, didn't they?
They did, yeah, after facing similar scientific pushback. So it's a really contentious issue.
Okay, so that's the communication side, but the EU is also looking at the security of, well, everything else digital. The Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA.
Right, the CRA, this one's different. It's focused on products with digital elements.
So basically anything smart. Your thermostat, your watch, industrial sensors.
Pretty much anything with hardware or software that connects to a network, directly or indirectly. The big idea is to shift the responsibility for security onto the manufacturers throughout the product's life.
Which makes sense. We hear all the time about insecure IoT devices being hacked.
Exactly. Consumers are often the victims of poor security design. So the CRA brings in common standards.
What kind of standards are we talking about? What do manufacturers have to do now?
Quite a bit, actually. They need to do cyber risk assessments before the product even launches. They have to provide automatic security updates by default, though you, the user, can opt out.
Okay, automatic updates by default, that's big.
It is. And they have to report incidents to NIS2, the EU Cybersecurity Agency, within 24 hours of finding out. Plus, keep documentation for 10 years or the product support period. If it has that CE mark, it needs minimum security checks. And critical products, they'll need external audits.
Sounds like a lot for manufacturers to handle. I remember some open source groups were worried initially about it stifling development.
Yeah, there was concern, especially from groups like the Eclipse Foundation and Apache. They worried the definition of commercial activity was too vague and could hurt open source projects.
Was that sorted out?
Mostly, yes. Amendments in late 2023 brought in this idea of an open source steward and made an exception for non-commercial open source. That helped calm things down. Though some, like Debian, still see challenges for small businesses that redistribute open source.
And if companies don't comply?
Big fines. Up to 15 million euros, or 2.5% of their global annual turnover. So serious consequences.
Navigating all this complexity, like the CRA, finding products that are actually compliant and secure, that's a real headache for organizations.
It absolutely is.
Which is why resources like our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com, are so useful. They help you find vetted solutions and experts who actually understand these new rules.
Definitely a needed service in this landscape.
Okay, so alongside the CRA, Denmark also brought in the EU's NIS2 and CER directives. They kicked in July 1st, 2025. How do these fit in?
Right, so CRA is about product security. NIS2 and CER are more about the organizations using the tech, especially those running essential services. NIS2 massively expands the scope beyond just, say, energy and transport.
How much broader?
Like food production, manufacturing, digital service providers, lots of sectors that weren't strictly regulated for cyber before. We're talking potentially thousands of Danish companies, medium and large, now covered. CER focuses specifically on the resilience of those critical entities against all sorts of risks, not just cyber.
So a much wider net of companies now have formal cybersecurity duties. What kind of things do they have to do?
Key things include doing a gap analysis against NIS2 Article 21, mapping their controls to ISO 27001, which is a widely used standard. They need proper incident response plans, standard operating procedures, and crucially, they need documented board approval for their cyber strategy.
Board approval, so it's really pushing this up to the executive level.
Absolutely. It's making cyber risk a core governance issue, no longer just an IT department problem. And registration is mandatory by October 1st, 2025.
And the penalties under NIS2 in Denmark, are they as tough as the CRA?
They are significant. For essential entities, it's up to 10 million euros or 2% of global turnover. For important entities, 7 million or 1.4%. Plus, potential license suspension, even bans for executives.
Wow, executive bans.
Yeah, and executive liability is now written into the Companies Act. The board is directly responsible for cyber governance.
The stringent requirements and that executive liability under NIS2 really hammer home the need for solid cybersecurity programs.
No question.
For leaders looking to get a handle on this, navigate the new legal landscape, and boost resilience, again, checking out resources like www.cisomarketplace.com makes a lot of sense. They offer things like CISO as a service, compliance tools, stuff that can really help manage this risk.
Good point. Okay, so that's the EU regulatory picture. But Denmark's also making its own strategic moves, right? This digital declaration of independence idea.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. It sounds quite dramatic. What's the core idea?
It reflects this wider European shift, moving away from being heavily dependent on, well, mainly non-European tech giants. Denmark, especially as it geared up for its EU presidency, started framing digital infrastructure as a key strategic asset.
So less reliance on the usual suspects.
Exactly. The goal, in their words, is to stand stronger on our own, become more competitive, and reduce our dependency on a few dominant tech providers. It's about having more controlled data governance, operational autonomy.
What sparked this? Was there a specific event or just growing unease?
Geopolitical concerns are definitely a big driver. And there was an incident that really highlighted the potential vulnerability. Remember the issue with the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor?
Vaguely. Microsoft restricting email access.
Allegedly, yes, temporarily, following U.S. sanctions. It served as a wake-up call about how reliant governments were on foreign tech for critical functions. Denmark's Minister for Emergency Situations even told Danish companies they should have exit plans for cloud services, make sure they truly own their data.
Exit plans for cloud services. That's a strong message. So how are they practically doing this? Switching away from big tech sounds like a monumental task.
It is, but they're starting. In June 2025, the Ministry of Digitalization announced plans to phase out Microsoft Office 365 and Windows in the public sector,
Replacing them with.
LibreOffice and Linux. Some cities like Copenhagen and Aarhus were already moving that way. Aarhus actually reported significant savings after moving some services to a German cloud provider.
LibreOffice and Linux across government. What are the expected benefits, besides sovereignty, and what are the hurdles?
Benefits are seen as more customization, transparent code you can audit for security, maybe more predictable costs long-term. Challenges, big ones, user experience, training people on LibreOffice, file compatibility issues, integrating with existing systems like Active Directory or SharePoint. It's not a simple switch.
No, definitely not. And beyond the software switch, they have a broader national cyber strategy, right? From 2022, 2024.
Yes, a comprehensive strategy. It explicitly states Denmark is vulnerable because it's so digitized, facing constant attacks. It allocated about 270 million Danish kroner for 34 new initiatives.
What are the main pillars of that strategy?
4 main goals. 1, protect vital societal functions, energy, health, transport, make sure their ICT can handle disruptions. 2, boost skills and management commitment. Get cybersecurity embedded at the top, train people across government, business, citizens.
Skills gap is a big one everywhere.
Huge. 3, better public-private cooperation. Sharing knowledge, providing support, especially for smaller businesses, SMEs. Apparently, 40% of Danish SMEs had inadequate security. And 4, active international cooperation, EU, NATO, UN deterrence, diplomatic responses like sanctions.
So pretty comprehensive. Did the strategy itself identify specific weaknesses they needed to address urgently?
Oh, yes. It pointed out that security levels in government agencies weren't great. Only 57% had fully implemented ISO 27001. Only 35% met minimum technical requirements. Nearly half, 36% of critical central government ICT systems were rated inadequate.
Oof, that's worse.
In that skills gap, again, 22% of companies couldn't hire the cyber staff they needed. So building that stronger technical bulwark, as they called it, really requires a massive effort on skills and tech implementation.
And finding the right talent and technology to meet those strategic goals, whether it's boosting skills or implementing solutions. That's where a marketplace approach like www.cisomarketplace.com can really connect organizations with the specific help they need.
Precisely. It's about finding the right partners.
Okay, we've talked regulation, strategy. Let's shift to the sharp end. A real-world cyber attack. That 2023 incident targeting Denmark's energy sector.
Yeah, this was major. Called the most extensive cyber attack in their history. Happened in May 2023. 22 companies involved in the energy infrastructure were hit in a coordinated campaign.
22, that's significant.
It is. And the attackers got into the industrial control systems, the ICS at some of them. These are the systems controlling the physical energy flow. Several companies had to go into island mode.
Meaning they had to disconnect from the main grid to contain the threat.
Exactly. To prevent wider damage, a really serious situation.
How did the attackers get in? What was the vulnerability?
It primarily exploited a really critical flaw, CVE 2023-28771, in Zixel firewalls. These are pretty common, especially in smaller firms, and, crucially, in the operational technology or OT networks within critical infrastructure.
And how bad was this flaw?
Bad. 9.8 out of 10 critical score. It basically let an unauthenticated attacker, someone just sending a specific data packet over the internet, completely take over the firewall.
The firewall itself, the thing meant to protect the network.
That's the nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
Your main shield becomes the entry point. Sector CERT, they're a nonprofit cyber center for critical sectors in Denmark, had actually warned their members specifically about patching these Zixel devices beforehand.
It always comes back to patching, doesn't it? So if your firewall's compromised, game over.
Pretty much. Shadow Server put out a warning saying, basically, if you have one of these vulnerable devices exposed online, just assume it's already compromised.
So how did the attack actually unfold? Was it just one big hit?
It came in waves. The first wave was May 11th. 16 energy companies targeted, 11 were successfully breached using that Zixel flaw. The attackers seemed very targeted, trying to stay quiet.
But Sector CERT caught it.
They did. Their sensor network, monitoring traffic across hundreds of companies, spotted the pattern in simultaneous attacks. Their incident response team went into overdrive, 247.
And they managed to stop it.
They secured all 11 compromised companies before the attackers could actually do damage, like mitigating energy flows or causing blackouts. That's why the public didn't notice. Electricity and heating stayed on. An incredible response, really, prevented what could have been a catastrophe.
Wow. But there was a second wave?
Yes, May 22nd. The attack started again. SectorCert thought it might even be a different group, maybe using new cyber weapons.
Or advanced tactics.
Possibly. It looks like they might have used two new Zexal vulnerabilities 0 days at the time, meaning no patch existed yet. CVE 2023 330 days 09 and NASH 3010. These later attacks also involved DDoS attacks launched from the compromised firewalls, and they seem to integrate the devices into the Mirai Mubot botnet.
Using the victim's own firewalls to launch attacks. Nasty. Any clues about who is behind this second, potentially more sophisticated wave?
This is where it gets really concerning. SectorCert saw some traffic communicating with IP addresses that had previously been linked to the Russian GRU unit known as Sandworm.
Sandworm. They're known for major ICS attacks, right? Ukraine power grid.
Exactly. 2015, 2016 power outages in Ukraine. They're a very capable state-sponsored group. Now, attribution's always hard. SectorCert couldn't say for sure, but they did note indications that a state actor may have been involved.
That definitely raises the stakes. So looking back at this whole incident, what were the main takeaways for Denmark? What worked and what needs improving?
What worked was SectorCert. Their sector-wide view, the rapid detection from their sensor network, they have like 270 sensors across critical infrastructure, and the close cooperation with the energy companies, suppliers, the police cybercrime unit. That was crucial in preventing disaster.
And their recommendations based on this, things others can learn.
Yeah, very practical stuff. 1, minimize your internet exposure. Only expose what's absolutely necessary. 2, patch promptly. Have solid processes for getting vulnerability info and acting on it. 3, have contingency plans. Know how to handle a compromise, how to go into island mode and practice it.
Makes sense.
4, monitor continuously. Collect logs, analyze them, use sector-wide monitoring if you can. 5, segment your networks, especially between IT and OT. Map your network inputs so you know where attacks could come from, and use segmentation to limit the blast radius if one part gets hit. And 6, know your assets. You can't protect what you don't know you have. Identify every device.
Solid advice for any organization, really, not just critical infrastructure.
Absolutely. And it ties into the broader threat picture Denmark faces. Their Center for Cybersecurity's 2024 report rates the threat from espionage by Russia and China and cybercrime as very high. Cyber activism, often pro-Russian groups, is high H. Destructive attacks, mainly linked to Russia, are medium. Supply chain attacks, phishing, ransomware, they're all still major issues.
And they stress that you can outsource the doing of security, but not the responsibility, right?
Exactly. The buck still stops with the organization's leadership.
That SectorCert incident is such a clear example of how fast things can go wrong with just one vulnerability.
It really is.
Being proactive, having those response plans ready, getting good threat intelligence, it's not optional anymore. And again, if you need help implementing those kinds of recommendations or boosting your defenses, www.cisomarketplace.com is the place to find vetted products, services, and expertise.
Couldn't agree more.
So wrapping this up, we've really seen Denmark on the front lines here, dealing with EU-wide debates on things like encryption, crafting its own path towards digital sovereignty, and fighting off sophisticated attacks in real time.
It's a constant battle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Complex, dynamic, but absolutely vital for any modern country.
And the lessons learned, the need for clear regulations like CRA and NIS2, the strategic thinking behind digital independence, the absolute necessity of vigilance and cooperation against threats, these aren't just Danish issues.
Not at all. They apply everywhere. They really challenge all of us, policymakers, business leaders, even just as individuals using technology every day, to think harder about our own digital environments.
So the final thought for you listening is this. In a world where one unpatched firewall can threaten an entire power grid, where your digital choices have geopolitical echoes, how ready are you? How prepared is your organization to defend its digital future? Something to really consider. And if you're looking to take proactive steps, we do encourage you to explore the solutions and expertise out there. Our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com, is a great starting point to find trusted resources for building that digital shield.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another look at the stories shaping our digital world.